That is the prayer there, the Kalinago people is.
Oh Tamusi! Oh Papa Tamusi! Okole Kalinago Kaima! Waitukubuli mama! Chisentina Buni! Chisentina Buni o Waitukubuli mama! Wato Tuna Bébé ici Non non Oh Tamusi Rubai Kalinago Lumankani and Ragone Okone O Tamusi Oh Tamusi Rubai Kalinago Lumankani and Ragone Okone O Tamusi Babanaki Mutu Megweru Mutu Su Kalinago Mutu O Tamusi Okone Lumankani and Ragone Kalinago Okone O Tamusi Waitukubuli Chisentina Buni Inyabu Inyaliku mama Oh Waitukubuli mama Okone Tamusi Lumankani and Ragone Kalinago O Tamusi
Okay baba Okay fili pepe morodia Temontiola
Thank you. For heritage. But you see the reason for the name, there's a story to it. That in 1902 when they were building the road across what they hoped would be the island, but it never actually finished. There were two bridges, one on this side and one on the other. And because the road came at an angle, both bridges had to be at an angle like a V. So the people who were walking from Casa Bruce and walking all the way from Bassinville, Bells, they call it, they said, Pont la Casse, ipa duet. You usually would walk across a bridge straight, but the ponts up here, they Pont la Casse. So I see that we're trying to bourgeoisize the name and call it Pont Heritage. Well, I don't mind taking a colonial name and giving it a Dominican name, but to have a Dominican name and then try to turn it into some kind of high-class name, I think is a bit of an insult to the traditions. But I will leave that where it is. I will leave that where it is, because we are actually commemorating something very important here. On my Facebook page today, I put the whole story of the 19th of September and the Kalinago uprising that occurred on the 19th of September 1930 and the days following it. And I think that perhaps it may be suitable for us just to have a little brief summary of this time. 1930, what the police came from Roseau and from Marigot to apprehend people who they believed had what they called smuggled goods. But of course, in those days and in the days before, the Kalinago people had the freedom to move from one end of the Caribbean to the other. And they did not understand this business of restriction as to where you could move and with whom you could trade. And so therefore, they were accustomed to going to Martinique, Guadeloupe, Marie-Galante, collecting their tobacco and their rum. And here the officials were attempting to institute new laws in the business of smuggling. And so the police captured some of the stuff that they found at Salibia, and the Kalinago people in the district reacted. The police shot, 4 people were shot, 2 people died, 1 person died on the spot and the other died later in Roseau, and a number of others were injured. And the chief at the time, Jolly John, whose name is enshrined in the Jolly John Park, he got to Roseau several days later, on the 22nd, and they immediately arrested him and put him in the fort, in those days Fort Young, and held him there under arrest for 8 days. He was stripped of his chiefdom, the staff was taken away, the sash was taken away, and this was not replaced until 1952. Of course, it is a far more detailed story. They sent a ship, the HMS Delhi, which is, was a Royal Navy vessel, which was stationed in Trinidad. The administrator of Dominica, Mr. Elliot, called on the British government to send this ship. It went over to the area of Salibia, and it fired these tar shells over the territory in the night, terrifying the people, forcing them to run into the forest in the hills, and then picking up others, arresting others, and bringing them to Roseau. So it is a very important part of our heritage and history. And that is why we must commemorate this event and the people who went through it. But even more than that, if we talk about the Kalinago people and a monument, we are talking about the people who held on to Dominica for longer than any other island. Dominica, when you want to explain it, you have to first explain the terrain, the mountains, the forests, the hills. It is the terrain of Dominica that is the basis of every historical understanding of Dominica. Once you've got the terrain, you then realize that the indigenous people from all of the neighboring islands, as they were pushed out one by one, from Antigua, from Guadeloupe, from down south, they could retreat to Dominica. And between the Kalinago and the terrain, it ensured that Dominica was the last island in the Caribbean to be colonized. This meant that the period of slavery was shorter than anywhere else. It also meant that the land provided for the Negmaon, the escaped slaves, to come from the coast and escape into this part of Dominica, which was at that time untouched. So there are all of these reasons why this monument should be placed here at the heart, at the center of Dominica. It is a place where the roads lead from the west, from the north, from the east, from the south, and as people circle, they will be reminded of the major contribution that was made by the Kalinago people to the preservation of this land. And therefore, I know there are many other speakers. I just want to join my voice with those and with the aspirations of the Kalinago cultural groups that have put together this spectacular display today to ensure that just as down in Roseau there is now a monument to the Neg Maman, which is making people ask questions and learn about that aspect of our history, so too a monument here would also keep alive and alert the memories and the actions and the determination of the indigenous people of Waitukubuli.
To greet you here this afternoon is, for me, a privilege and an honor. We are the generation of Dominicans and Caribbean people who have been privileged over the past 50 years or so to see the great changes that have taken place among the Kalinago. The transformation of a group of people from a position of imposed marginalization and low self-esteem to emerge as a strong and vibrant people, proud of themselves and their culture, and to take their place in the front line of growth and development of our country, side by side with our fellow Dominicans. It is for this reason, ladies and gentlemen, that I am part and parcel of this particular group of people in many ways, in many various positions. I've been honored to take part in this transformation, going back to my days as a young teacher at the Dominica Grammar School, when I was shocked to find young Dominicans who at the time were taken up with black power and were complaining about the fact that black people were being discriminated against by white people, that they themselves, Dominicans, were discriminated against their own compatriots, the Kalinago people, calling them abusive names and the sort of names that were degrading them in several ways. I started my program basically to change that, to change the way of thinking, to come into the realization of what is important and who we are as Dominican people. A change of thinking was necessary, and a new recognition of the realities of who and what it meant to be Dominica had to be undertaken. Later, I was happy to prepare the first group of Kalinago performers to go to Carifesta in Barbados in 1981, where they met the Garifuna people of Belize, and I think for the first time heard the Caribbean language being spoken. As you might know, the Garifuna still speak the original Caribbean language which was spoken by the Kalinago many centuries ago. And there has always been an effort to relearn and re-establish the language, the project which needs support and needs more attention being paid to. So the task of reverting that language or retrieving that language by the Garifuna is a project that needs to be more vigorously pursued. A few years later, I was able to arrange for the Commonwealth Foundation to invite a large contingent of Kalinago singers and dancers on a tour to the UK, performing in a number of big cities in that country. It was my joy again and privilege to accompany and introduce them at the various venues. And perhaps most important of all, as Chief Cultural Officer, I was able to propose the removal of the word reserve and replace it with a more appropriate and respectful territory by naming that portion of, when naming that portion of land which Governor Hesketh Bell had the foresight to map out for the Kalinago in 1903, 110 years ago. And so the story continues as we see the Caribbean people, and especially Caribbean scholars, become more aware of the history and culture, and most importantly, the plight of these brave people. But some work has been done over the past 50 years or so, although it is necessary to clear up misunderstandings and misinterpretations of the history of the people, and most importantly, to put them in the rightful place as equals among all Dominicans and all men in the world. But I have no doubt that this work will be accomplished, and accomplished this time by the Kalinago people themselves, who are now equipped to take such matters into their own hands. I say this with confidence, because you have distinguished yourselves as a people who have survived where others have perished, who have triumphed where others have been defeated, and who have blossomed and borne fruit where others have withered away. And so this reason I say that this week, you do not simply celebrate Kalinago Week, but in fact you celebrate Kalinago Survival Week, an idea which I'll invite the Kalinago Council to consider the naming of this week. So long live the Dominican people, all of them. Long live the people of the Kalinago people, the Kalinago people of Dominica, I should say, and long live the Survival Week, Kalinago Survival Week. Mabrika, Mabrika.
I want to begin by congratulating the Kalinago Council and the organizers and planners of Kalinago Week, and of course the organizers of the Monument Day here at Pont Cassé. I think the activities of Kalinago Week 2013 have certainly captured the attention of the nation, and I'm sure other persons in other parts of the world, given our online technology. The work of the Kalinago Council and groups like Carifuna and Karina through the years has certainly given prominence and recognition to the Kalinago culture in Dominica, and has helped to promote Dominica as the home of the Kalinago people. I congratulate all of you on your achievements, and at this time I want to honor and salute the Kalinago people on the occasion of your special Kalinago Week. It's been said that a country without a knowledge of its history and culture is like a tree without roots. It's important that we as a nation are aware of our history and culture in order that we can understand where we have come from and what it is which has contributed to making us who we are today. The Cultural Division knows and we recognize the importance of understanding ourselves as a people and a nation, and the Kalinago people have made a significant and outstanding contribution to Dominica's life and Dominica's development. Let us remember the Kalinago people and other indigenous peoples inhabited not just Dominica but the Caribbean islands for thousands of years. Remember, they gave Dominica the name Waitukubuli, meaning tall is her body. So for thousands of years they've been here, long before Columbus arrived. They were the first inhabitants of the island, and of course they've contributed a lot to Dominica's culture and heritage. We know that they've contributed to our art and craft development, our agriculture, our architecture, the names of places, animals, different types of food and fish, our costumes, our music, our dance, and so many other aspects of our rich life and heritage in Dominica. We know too that the Kalinago put up hundreds of years of resistance towards colonization, and they struggled and endured, and in the end overcame many of the tremendous challenges which they had to face. So the idea of a monument in honor of the Kalinago people is a brilliant and fitting one. When this monument materializes, I think it will be a landmark achievement for culture and heritage in Dominica, and also an important form of recognition of the contribution and the achievement of the Kalinago people. A monument is significant and important because it helps to create greater awareness of our country's culture, history, and heritage. It pays tribute to and gives recognition to the contribution which was made by the person or persons who are being honored, and in this case it would be the Kalinago people. Monuments draw people's attention, curiosity, and interest, and in that way it helps the people of the country and visitors as well to learn more about the history and the culture of the country. So in many ways, a monument saluting the Kalinago and their enduring and resilient contribution to Dominica is one I think would be timely, meaningful, and very relevant. And even for the Kalinago people themselves, a monument would certainly instill pride in the Kalinago people. And on a wider level, an installation of a monument for the Kalinago people would be a significant and important one for Dominica as a nation, because all Dominicans need to know and understand and appreciate our culture and heritage. And even further afield, the monument would be important to the rest of the world, sending a message that here it is that a people have survived for thousands of years, facing tremendous challenges. And I'm sure that visitors to Dominica will find the monument very intriguing, and that would heighten their interest on the part of tourists and visitors in the lifestyles and the expressions of the Kalinago people. So in closing, on behalf of the Cultural Division and the National Cultural Council, I would like to lend our ongoing support to the Kalinago people, to the idea of the monument here at Port Cartier, and to the continued development and preservation of your culture and your heritage. I want to encourage the Kalinago Council and groups like Carifuna and Karina and the other groups in the Kalinago territory to continue promoting and preserving your rich cultural heritage. May God continue to bless you, to bless your efforts, and to bless the nation of Dominica.
I think there's much in our favor. There's much in our favor, Kalinagos, and there's no reason for us to pick a quarrel with anyone. There's no reason for us to have confrontation with anybody. What we need to do is to push on peacefully, and we will get what we want and what is rightfully ours. I want to remind you that after this afternoon, whatever is it that we're doing here will continue. Will continue. And since we have the support of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet of Dominica, I think we are on the right track. And I think we will succeed in what we are asking, to get what we are asking for. The Kalinago Council has indicated that it is prepared to help to raise the funds that will go towards the erection of this monument. The government in turn will assist. So we see right here and then that we have a council which is willing, and I suspect which is able to live up to its mandate. I will say that as a result, not too long from now, and I don't know how long it will be, but I say not too long from now, we should see some movements towards the erection of a monument in honor of the Kalinago people. We've seen one monument erected in Roseau in honor of the Neg-Maron. Now the Neg-Maron played a main role and a major role in our history and in preserving the culture of Dominica. We have to understand that the culture of Dominica is very unique. It's not only Kalinago. It's not only African. It's also East Indian and all the other tribes who came here. So our culture is so rich that we have every right to celebrate not only the lives of the Kalinagos, but the lives of Waitukubulians. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a few other speakers, and in the interest of light, I would want to say, finally, long live the Kalinagos.
I want to say it's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon as you recognize Carib Week. For us in Dominica, we think it is very significant that you can continue in the preservation and the education of our public as it pertains to the life of the Carib and the development that has taken place over the years in Dominica. I want to commend the organizers of this afternoon activity for the tremendous work that they have done in ensuring that this activity comes through in spite of the inclement weather. I also want to commend the Carib Council for the work that they are doing. Interestingly too, we must recognize the contribution of you, the Kalinago people, in preserving the culture not just of you, the Caribs, but also of Dominica. and the significant role that you have played in the cultural heritage and the development of culture in Dominica. In saying that, I also want to recognize the Carifona Cultural Group. We know the Carifona Cultural Group has not only represented Dominica, represented you locally, but has represented you regionally and internationally. And we salute you for being ambassadors to Dominica. We wanted to thank you for preserving that heritage, that Caribbean heritage, because we know within the Caribbean, I think in Dominica, you are the only set who have really remained resilient and who have shown the perseverance in ensuring that you can keep your people alive and you can keep your culture alive. Let me also say that before you were considered to be, the Kalinagos were considered to be shy or timid persons. And we want to really applaud you for the way that you have integrated and you have become absorbed in the Dominican culture. And so it means, therefore, we are collaborating and integrating well for the development of this country. I want to recognize the contribution that you have made to the development of the tourism industry in Dominica, to the development of art, of our artists and of all our craft products in Dominica. I think the Carib territory is the only village where we can get the most persons involved in art and craft development and preservation of that part of our culture. I want to say your dance is unique, your songs are unique, and so it makes us in Dominica unique because we have something that others cannot offer. And this is because of what you are doing, and we recognize that valid contribution that you are making. I want to say we also salute the many cultural icons in the Carib territory. We want to salute the persons who've excelled or who have shown that they can represent Dominica. And we want to also salute Anthea Burton, who was your first Kalinago or first national queen in Dominica in 1982. She was followed by Francilia Ega in 1993. And of recent, we had Miss Nadira Lando, who represented the Carib territory at our cultural activities. Not only did they represent Dominica, but they were able to go out in the region and secure titles for Dominica. We want to commend you for that, what you have done for Dominica. Not forgetting Miss Roxanne Frederick in 2000, who was the first and the only Miss World Create for the Kalinago people. And so we need to recognize them, because within the Carib territory, we have had people who have exemplified, not just in culture, in agriculture, because you tried as much as you can to ensure that the agricultural sector remains alive and can contribute significantly to the economic development of Dominica. As we speak of tourism, we also want to make mention of the various craft shops that you have. And you know, very often when the cruise ship is season, the tourist season is open, the Carib territory is one of the landmark area where you know our Carib migrate, our tourists really want to move to, because of your artistic development in terms of craft, your l'escalade teaching, which is very, very, very exciting for most of us who want to really explore what nature has to offer, your horseback ridge, and your cultural group for the performance, the splendid performance that they usually put on at many of our activities in Dominica. In the Carib territory, that is the only place that we will see the straw huts and the baskets of a variety of designs. And that for us, and we know if you travel out of Dominica, very often you are asked about the Carib territory, you are asked about the development of the craft in that area. And we see those things emulated in other parts of the Caribbean. So I really want to congratulate you for all that you are doing. I want to say continue to remain, keep your culture, your heritage alive. It is very important for us in Dominica, for our students, because very often we read, but being in contact with the Caribbean directly, it helps us to understand where we came from, where we are, and where we are heading to as a people. So your presence in Dominica is significant, not only to you, the Caribbean, but to all of us in Dominica. I want to congratulate you on this week of activity. I want to wish you well. I want to say long live the life of the Caribbean, long live the culture of the Caribbean, long live the heritage of the Caribbean, and long live Dominica.
I am quite heartened to see that despite of the inclement weather, that you, the Kalinago people, have stood up as true warriors and have ventured here this afternoon. It is indeed an emotional moment for me to see that you have stood up as brave Kalinago people and have defied the weather and have turned up here in Pokase to support or demand for a place to establish a monument in honor of the Kalinago people. I do not have to explain anymore the reason why we have made this request, because the members of government here, they themselves clearly understand the contribution of the Kalinago people to this country, and their presence here this afternoon signifies that clearly that they understand and has given support to our request to set up a monument right here in this area, in the heart of Kalinago, in the heart of Waitukubuli, right here in this center of this forward, in honor of the Kalinago people. And their presence tell me that they clearly understand and give support to this project. Because this is something that across the region, in countries where they do not have an indigenous population, there are a number of streets and places named after the indigenous population that no longer exists. In Guadeloupe and Martinique, in our neighboring countries, you have streets and places named after the indigenous people. The people that once were in those islands but are no longer. In St. Vincent, you have a monument in honor of Chief Chatway. In Trinidad and in other islands of the Caribbean. So this is reason enough for the establishment and the setting up of a monument right here. So this is clearly understood and I'm sure supported by the rest of the country. But it's important to note, it's important to show that this is not an empty request, and the Kalinago people is standing up behind the council in support of the request that was made early last month. And this is evident by what we can see right here in front of us. And we know that there are persons who are not here this afternoon, but stand with us as well. And we can feel the presence of the Spirit right here as we make our request. And this is important, and we ask you to stand with us as we continue the task of ensuring that we have a 25th monument erected in the center of the circle right there. And our persons from the territory, our young men and women warriors who have defied the weather and have stood up as live monuments, I want to commend you for your bravery and your spirit in defying all odds to be here. This is the true spirit of the Kalinago people. This is not dead, it is alive, and I want to recognize that and want you to continue living up to what our ancestors expected of us. No longer should anybody in this country confront you and call and say that the Kalinago people are shy and bashful. We made the call for the renaming of the territory, and we expect that this will be done very shortly, because we want to say gone is the past of the Carib. We are now reclaiming our Kalinago name, which is the rightful name of the people. We know where the word Carib comes from, and we know the negative stereotypes that's associated with the word Carib. So, once again, the appeal goes out to the Minister of Government here to at the right time to give step up to the name change, because I know that they clearly understand the call that we're making and the reason why. Because this is evidence in what they have just said and in evidence of what the Kalinago people has achieved and what they are doing right now. Our hopes, our dreams and aspirations are not only for our own people as well, but it's also for the rest of the country. We do not only want that our name be used in promotional material for Discover Dominica Authority. We want to ensure that there's meaning and there's purpose in what has been done, and that we as Kalinago people draw down the benefit from that. Our effort and our contribution to this country is priceless. I do not have to go over it again because it's something that's clearly understood. And when we leave here this evening, we want to leave here happy. We want to leave here with the assurance that very soon, when we drive past, we'll see this monument. And as I said before, the purpose of the monument it raises questions, and the true information will be given out, not only for our own people, but for the rest of the country and visitors visiting the country. But we want to ensure as well, in the very near future, that the answers that will be raised when the monument is erected will be answered in the schools of this country, because will be asking for the Kalinago history to be taught in all the schools in this country. So this is when the Afro-Dominican population will get a better understanding of the Kalinago brothers and sisters that sit in the same bench with them in the primary schools of this country. It also gives our Kalinago people a better understanding of the Afro-Dominicans that sit right next to them. So this only ensures peace and harmony among our own people in this country, because there is a clear understanding of who we are, our distinct histories, and where we are going next as a Dominican people.
Just before I get into the speech, just 4 points I want to raise, which I hear often at the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, which may or may not have filtered back to the government of Dominica, but I think could be useful for them to be aware of. For example, adoptions. There are many adoptions of Kalinago children in its, and I'm aware of a few in Barbados. I'm not sure if you're aware, but in Ethiopia, for example, when you adopt a child there, the adoptive parents have to sign a written agreement promising to raise the child to be aware of its Ethiopian heritage, not just where it came from, but also its tribal heritage, because there are many tribes in Ethiopia, and the adoptive parents are to maintain that knowledge as that child grows, so that he'll be a well-rounded individual. It is not simply enough to say, oh, I provide a home and a loving environment and food and clothes for a child. A child from an indigenous background needs to grow up to be aware of who he is and to be proud of that fact. Another point, the government of Dominica has historically, of all the Caribbean governments, probably #1 in terms of its good reputation at the UN. A lot of people are not aware that indigenous peoples could not get to address the Permanent Forum directly, but the ambassador of Dominica gave up his seat in the General Assembly so that indigenous people in North America could address the forum, and that is how they were able to open the door, which led to 20 years later the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples of the World. So Dominica is to be thanked for that being possible. Another point, Dominica also is the only country in the world, as far as I know, that has ever issued a diplomatic passport for the chief of its indigenous peoples. I don't know if it still exists today, but that is something that was reverberated around the world as being the most progressive step any government has ever taken. I also had 2 suggestions which I guess would be useful to be considered. If 3% of Dominica's national population is Kalinago, then it could be possible that 3% of the national annual budget be allocated for the Kalinago people. The council and other infrastructural running expenses, including the salaries of Kalinago teachers, nurses, etc., with the balance for entrepreneurship and individual social development, all of that could come out of this allocation. Just like in Guyana, there are problems with accessing loans because you don't have collateral. But a fund like this would more than be able to compensate and supply those kind of funds for entrepreneurs who want to start farming or whatever small business to make an honest living on the territory. And finally, at 3%, I think the territory is about 2% of the area of Dominica. Okay, if you're 3% of the national population, it'd be very easy for the government to make the size of the currently recognized Kalinago territory, which is congested, increase it to 3% of the land area of Dominica. Dominica has ample land. This would not be as hard as it may sound to achieve. Dominica can easily become a role model for the entire world in its just and equitable treatment of indigenous peoples, as it's well on the way to being recognized for that as it is. Alright, some people may be wondering about who I am and why I'm here, so please bear with me as I attempt to be brief in laying a foundation in your minds as I make my verbal way to the crux of the matter which has led us all to gather here today, with the noblest of intentions, to demonstrate initially in word and subsequently in deed the fact that this government has an equitable vision for the descendants of the first Dominicans, whose ancestors were the first national heroes of Dominica, fighting against European imperialism and colonialism, by erecting a monument in their honor and dedicated to their sacrifices, as many other countries in the Caribbean have already done. And I will speak a little more about this later. First, let us examine, albeit briefly, the connection between Dominica and Barbados. I was born in Barbados, but my tribal origins lie elsewhere. Just as your most famous historical chief Warner, he too was born of an Amerindian mother and a white father, just like me. And he too was born on an island, though his tribal origins lay in another place. And like me, decided to return to his mother's people and dedicate his life to them. The difference in my case is the fact that they are both Guyana Arawaks and Dominica Kalinagos in my ancestry. So I have dedicated my life to helping both of my peoples, not favoring one over the other, but feeling a deep love for both. In 1635, the man who would become famously known as Chief Carib Warner was born in St. Kitts. He was the son of a Kalinago mother from Dominica and a white father, Sir Thomas Warner, from England, who had previously tried and failed to establish an English colony in Guyana. The English governor of Barbados, Lord Willoughby, appointed Chief Warner, who had returned to his mother's people in Dominica and grown into adulthood among the Kalinagos here, as the first colonel and lieutenant governor of Dominica. The French captured Chief Warner in 1666, and on the 9th of December 1667, Governor Willoughby of Barbados negotiated with his release for the French, and reinstated him as governor of Dominica. In February 1668, peace was negotiated between the English and the Kalinago through the medium of Chief Warner, but the English colonists in Antigua were not friendly to the Kalinagos, as the Barbadian English colonists were. And those in Antigua, led by Chief Warner's own half-bright brother, Philip Warner, tricked Chief Warner, who welcomed him to Dominica with a grand feast, and Philip, with his force of Englishmen from Antigua, murdered Chief Warner in his sleep and slaughtered every Kalinago man, woman, and child in Chief Warner's village, with very few Kalinagos escaping alive. Now here's where my connection comes in. There's been a persistent rumor for centuries in my family that a son of Chief Warner was later rescued and eventually taken to Barbados, where the ruling class intended to raise him with the intention of restoring him as a grown man in Dominica to be the Barbados-friendly governor as his father had been. But this plan never materialized, and the son of Chief Warner remained in Barbados and married a local white lady there. And that is how the Warner name survived in my family until Florence Warner, who was my mother's paternal grandmother, married Mr. Fotheringham Corbin. Now both Florence Warner and Fotheringham Corbin look like pure white people. But once again, as has happened in my family in every generation since the son of Chief Warner, most of their children were born with straight black hair and skin complexions of Amerindians. Only their blonde hair and blue eyes of her parents came out in the sister of Pearl Corbin. Sorry. My mother's mother was Princess Marian of the Eagle Clan, Lokona Arawaks of Guyana, and her father was the last hereditary Lokona Arawak chief in Guyana. And his name was Amoratahe Haubariria, which in English means flying harpy eagle. Now, in the spirituality of the Lokona Arawak people, we believe that important things can never remain hidden forever, for the creator of the universe always finds a way to bring what was in the dark into the light one day. The recurring Kalinago features of my mother's paternal ancestry, which refuses to be obliterated by over 300 years of European genetic infusion and dilution, is to us proof that the old family rumor is true. Furthermore, I was never raised to see my Kalinago brothers and sisters as being some other people. No, I was always told by my elders that the Kalinago of Dominica are my people just as much as the Eagle Clan Lokona Arawaks of Guyana are, and I love them both. In fact, my great uncle David told me to go to our people in Dominica on my first visit here in November 1992. When I knew no one but the family of Alvin Thomas invited me to stay with them and showed me every kindness imaginable. Alvin, may your spirit rest in peace, brother. In the late 1992, when people of European descent were for the most part celebrating Columbus, who is a hero to them but a genocidal villain to us, and marking the 500th anniversary of Columbus's accidental arrival in the Caribbean, and our Amerindian discovery that white people existed and had bigger boats with different diseases and attitudes than us. At my then age of 19, I came to Dominica to mark this year of mourning for us by seeking a Kalinago bride to marry and mark the anniversary. I stayed for 2 weeks. Unfortunately, only on my very last night did two beautiful Kalinago girls come to my tent and tell me that they were interested in marrying me. I said, but it's too late now. I leave early the next day to return to Barbados. So I just gave each one a big hug and a kiss on the cheek and left the next day still unmarried. Because I was unsuccessful, my great uncle then told me to go to our people in Guyana next, and so I did. And in the second week of my 2-week visit to Arawak territory in Guyana, I met a 17-year-old Arawak girl from the Eagle Clan and married her 7 days later on the 11th of December 1992. Our 21st anniversary is coming up this year, and we have 4 beautiful children. In fact, they left Barbados yesterday on our first child's 20th birthday to come here to be able to do this today. This takes me back to a fact that I did not know about Kalinago Chief Warner. Only by reading Professor Lennox Honeychurch's work today, I learned about the de facto peace treaty that Chief Warner was able to secure in his time. And I smiled to myself as I remembered the peace treaty I created and co-signed with former Chief Hilary Frederick in 1999 on the Carib territory, assisted by fellow Kalinago Jacob Frederick. For we believe that the driving force in great men and women that leads them to serve their people never dies, but lives on forever in their descendants. Of course, there was no war between Arawaks and Caribs in 1999. That was not the point of it. The reason for my ceremonial and symbolic peace treaty was purely to close and end a sad chapter in the history of our two peoples and start a new and positive chapter in the history of the Caribbean. One where all the old divisions are erased and replaced by a new spirit of solidarity, loyalty, and liberty for all of us who share our lands today. But getting back to the reason we are gathered here today, however, in Arima, Trinidad, there's a statue erected by the government to the greatest Nepuyo chief of Trinidad, Hayarima. In St. Vincent, the government erected a monument to the greatest Garifuna chief of St. Vincent, Châteauguay. In Baracoa, Cuba, 2 statues were erected by the Cuban government to the 2 greatest Taino chiefs, Chief Hatwe and Chief Guama, with Chief Hatwe being declared Cuba's first national hero. In the Dominican Republic, there are 4 statues erected by the government to their 4 greatest Taino chiefs, including Kalinago and his wife Anacoana, who was the first woman Taino chief in recorded history. In Puerto Rico, there are multiple statues and monuments erected by the government to their greatest Taino chiefs, among them Chief Hamaco, Chief Hayuya, Chief Agwebana II, and they even carved the face of Chief Mabodakama into a mountainside and named the highway after him. But where is the statue or monument to the Kalinago people who fought and died in Dominica to keep it free of the evils of European imperialism and colonialism? I must admit I always assumed that there was such a fitting and deserved tribute to the first patriots of Dominica somewhere in this country. It was only when the committee informed me that my assumption was incorrect that I realized that there has been an oversight of every government of Dominica until now. I do not know the Honorable Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerritt of Dominica, but I have only been hearing positive things about him and his cabinet, and I trust that the PM is a man of vision and deep convictions, as is evidenced by his colleagues here today, and that he will see that this long overdue monument becomes a reality. I thank you all for your time.